I always wonder, you ever hear people talk about like a huge accomplishment
Mm,
so humbly and you're
mm,
like, what? Like they're so almost nonchalant about it. It's
I know.
almost like they're like, eh. I think a big reason is probably because they've become such a person
Mm,
that who they are is more important than what they do or what they have. The reality is that I believe the greatest reward is not the completion of the project or the task or the accomplishment.
rebuilding, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually think it's the person you become in the process. If I am asking for big things in my life, a lot of success is being able to deal with bigger amounts of stress in a better
Mhm.
way. I just encourage everybody, like, yes, it's a little bit more work. Yes, it's definitely more vulnerable. But on the other side, the freedom that you will feel to be the authentic you, it's a superpower.
Hi, Zandy. Let me ask you this. When something in your life breaks, I mean, maybe it's a relationship, a system, it could be a team dynamic, it could be something inside of you for that matter. What's your default move? Do you try to patch it up just enough to keep things running? Or do you take a deeper look and ask, is it time to rebuild? I think if we're honest, it's not necessarily what we want to do, but I think what we often do is settle for repairs. We had duct tape where we should lay new concrete, we might say. We tweak behaviors, but it's easy to avoid the deeper work of replacing what's not working at the foundation level. While that might get us through for a while, it rarely produces long term change. That's the heart of the message in Jon Harper's book, Rebuild, Don't Repair. John's a husband, father, business leader, teacher, and he's walked through his own personal journey of tearing down and starting again. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to move beyond quick fixes and do the courageous work of rebuilding. You'll hear why many of our deepest tendencies, our habits, our thought patterns, and even the way we lead, they weren't consciously chosen in many cases. We'll talk about why rebuilding often feels awkward, how daily habits quietly shape our long term legacy, and how blessing sometimes shows up not at the finish line, but at the very first step of rebuilding. Whether you're rebuilding a part of your team, your leadership, or even something deeply personal, John's insights will help you lead with more honesty, courage, and clarity. Hey, quick note. If you or someone you know is thinking about getting PMP certified, we put together a super helpful guide called The 5 Best Resources to Help You Pass the PMP on Your First Try. We've helped thousands of people earn their certification. We'd love to help you too. It's totally free and it's a great way to get a head start. Just go to 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com to grab your copy. Again, that's 5bestresources.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Let's make this the year you get your PMP. Let's jump into our discussion with John about his book, Rebuild, Don't Repair. Hey, John, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Hey, Andy, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. There's often a tension, I think, as I kind of talked about in the intro, between the quick fix and getting to the root cause. And in terms of your book, it's a distinction between repairing and rebuilding. So, what are some examples of where you felt the pull of succumbing to duct tape solutions at work or in life? And why is it so tempting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so tempting. I'll start with that is because we're in a world where speed seems to be the greatest currency, right? Like do it
Mm,
fast, do it now. I want it fast, cheap, and good.
mm.
And usually we can't get all three. We gotta we gotta kind of
Right. Better,
pick
faster,
between
cheaper,
those,
right?
right? Yeah, exactly,
Right.
right. So I think that's the temptation. I also think there's a bigger temptation today because of social media. It feels like people are fixing it overnight, right? So I see a post yesterday, and then I see a post today, and it seems like your life is fantastic all of a sudden, right? And I think even, using a work example, I think us as leaders, we create that environment unconsciously a lot where, I've worked for public companies and private companies and, whether it's stockholder pressure, whether it's CEO or private investor pressure or whatever it is, it's like, we need it done today.
Mm,
And the reality is sometimes, that pressure can overcome us being able to see at 30,000 feet and see like, we should be in this for the long game. And if we succumb to that quick fix pressure, what I found is we constantly are having to do it. And I think that's what creates professional burnout, personal exhaustion. I think that's why
Mm.
depression rates are up. I think that's why, substance abuse and, suicidal tendencies and anxiety and all those things are starting to weigh. And I think science and data is starting to show out the result of us succumbing to more pressure of fixing it quickly versus taking a step back, right? And being able to say, hey, I'm not supposed to have it figured out for the next year, 2 years. Why? Because I'm in rebuilding and I'm supposed to be tearing things apart right now. I don't look at my house while I'm under construction. It's not supposed to be
Uh,
pretty.
mhm.
But I think if we don't understand what that journey should look like, it's really easy to succumb to that pressure. And that's really what the genesis of the book is about: is for people to really understand what does it look like when you're rebuilding something, so that you don't fall into that pressure.
And it's messy, right? I mean, you've had to rebuild sales teams, I seem to recall from the book, and it's just it's not easy, right? It's hard, and sometimes it can be confusing. And we had a guy. Actually, he was the chief product officer at Adobe a while back. He said the middle of a project is like a cross country trip in a car with no windows because you don't know where you are and if you're going to get there,
Oh,
right?
true.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's tempting to not do the work. What do you think?
Yeah, it is. That's such a good analogy. And you know, I think it's also hard because when we're rebuilding a part of our life, or a sales team or a project team or a business or a family or a marriage, or insert thing here,
Right.
the journey of rebuilding is always unique
Mhm.
and therefore often misunderstood,
Yeah.
right? Because if I'm rebuilding something, I have an end goal that isn't your end goal. Like I heard this saying and I loved it, which is like, don't expect other people to understand the call of God on your life. It wasn't a
Mm.
conference call. And I just love that because it's
Yeah.
like it's so applicable, whether it's business or personal. It's like the mission when I've rebuilt sales teams in my career, I was rebuilding it to accomplish that. Like it wasn't supposed to mirror every other region or division or whatever. It was unique to what we were trying to accomplish. Same
Mhm.
thing with my personal journey. I'm trying to build my life. I'm not trying to carbon copy yours. And so you're not
Mhm.
supposed to understand the moves that I'm making, the things that I'm doing. That's okay. And I
Yeah.
think as people, as a community, as a society, we have to be willing to give people grace to not have to understand everything they're doing to co-sign on it. And then on the other side, we shouldn't have to, we got to free ourselves from needing that co-signature to be able and willing to say, I'm going to make some different decisions here, and I got to tear down this part of my life or my business or my team or my family or my habits or whatever to get there. And if I'm misunderstood, it's kind of part of the journey.
Yeah. You know, you wrote that rebuilding means laying a new foundation, and typically that foundation lies in the people. So, how do you assess whether let's say, the people in the team are part of the problem or key to the rebuild? Because
Yeah.
it could be either, right?
Yeah, it could be either. And I think the first thing I do is whenever I'm dealing with people is I want to understand what they're experiencing, right? I'm a really big believer in experience. Like if I can understand what you are experiencing, then I can understand if you are part of the problem or can be part of the solution. And so I will often sit down with people and say, "Hey, talk to me about, you've been part of the team for 6 months, year, 6 years, whatever. Talk to me about the last 6 to 12 months. Like what are you seeing? What are you feeling?" And I try to do it especially in a business environment. I try to do it offsite because what I found is if they're in my office, it can be like I got to give the boss the answer he wants, right? And so I try to let's have some coffee, let's have some lunch. Hey, this is not boss and employee. This is teammate to teammate. I'm new here. I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Mhm.
Like
Right.
I do,
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you feeling? How, right? And usually if people are like everything's awesome, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the problem, I hesitate with those people being part of the solution. And
Mm.
mainly because they're pointing fingers before they're trying to figure out, like, man, I'm trying this and it's not working. If they're self-reflective about a tough situation, that means they would be willing to do the work to tear down
Mhm.
some of their own habits or tendencies to help the team rebuild versus I'm fantastic, right? But if these three things could be fixed, everything would
Right.
be awesome, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, okay, that I look for that. So I look for heart posture, I guess, is
Mhm.
the best short answer.
Hmm.
And then I look for data. It's like, what is the data telling me based on your job, whether it's sales or project management or admin work or whatever? Like, what is I see now your heart posture. What is the data? If those two things are in alignment, and I can then assess, okay, your heart posture is I want to be part of the solution, but nobody's giving me direction. So I'm really like, but I'm trying everything I can. Man, I can work with that person. If somebody over here is telling me I'm great. One, two, three needs to be fixed. And then I look at the data and just the effort's not there. So they've basically mailed in the effort until items one, two, and three are fixed. That's a really hard person to turn around because you're not even doing the work to try. So you're kind of just waiting on the circumstance to be perfect. And you and I both know in life and in business, it's never going to be perfect.
No,
So
that's for
that's
sure.
kind of how I look at at the person individually and figure out like, can you be part of the solution or not?
Yo, this is a while ago we had this guy on, but part of his job, like how interesting or scary would this be? He's brought in when an executive is struggling, and what they're asking him to do is find out, is this executive savable? Okay.
Yeah.
Should we invest? So it's along the lines of what he said. And this guy said, it's never an easy calculation, but he goes, the biggest thing he looks for is agency. Does the person come off as a victim, or do they come off as, hey, we can do something about it? And I think that aligns with how you were saying that, right? It's just a
That
different way of saying the same thing.
man, that's it. And because it's like if I don't own it, like the people that can rebuild are only people that say, I am the problem and I can be the solution.
Right.
Like that's it. Because I can't be a solution to your problem. If you're the problem, I can't fix you. And if
Yeah.
I'm the problem, you can't fix me. And
Right.
so it's like individual ownership, therefore united ownership. And I think,
Mhm.
there's a principle in the work, it comes from a biblical place, but it's like the principle of unity is really powerful. I can't
Mhm.
have half of my team owning a problem and the other half trying to not take agency. That creates massive problems.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's like, are you willing to say, "Hey, I'm not perfect. Like I bet I'm probably part of this issue.
Yeah.
I'm willing to hear you and be humble enough to say, man, last 6 months, 12 months, 8 months, I've been slacking off here because it doesn't really matter the reason. I got to own that and I got to be
Yeah.
willing to make so if I don't have that ownership, it's really really hard to turn someone around.
What I like about this discussion so far is, as much as it's about them and thinking through that, we also have to look in the mirror, right? Am I pointing the finger? Am I taking ownership and doing things like that? And something that stood out to me in the book is your point that our foundation, things like our beliefs, our thought patterns, emotional defaults, habits, relational instincts, things we operate from. Often it wasn't a conscious choice. In fact, you write that your foundation wasn't initially framed by you.
Hmm.
So, what are some of the sources that tend to shape our foundation or our structure, as you call it? I mean, personally and as leaders, and why is it so important for us to realize that many of those foundational elements, you could almost say they were inherited, not selected?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true because I think what happens is like, especially as people, right? So we grow up, like think about the things that you can't control. You can't control the family you were born into, can't control where you were born, can't control the environment with which you grew up in a large capacity for a large part of your, 18 and under for most of us, right? Some of us, got out of the house earlier than that, but you can't really control what your parents did or didn't do, how your parents did or didn't talk to you. Did they encourage you? Did they belittle you?
Right.
There's so many things that create a belief system and if you look at who we are as humans, we are built to survive. Like that is how we are wired. And so if you have habits and thoughts and talk a certain way and associate with certain people, those four pillars that I talk about in the book, if those four pillars are built around a structure to make sure you survived that environment early on, chances are you're making decisions based on that foundation still today in a large capacity. And then as we grow older, late teens into young adulthood, and for some of us, well beyond that, all we're doing is stacking decisions and building a structure to reinforce the foundation that was built out of our own control. And so it's fascinating because the premise of the book is giving people hope that if they had a foundation that was built that wasn't perfect, that wasn't ideal, that there is a process you can go through. But I think the first step is like giving yourself grace to know I'm operating unless you have a conscious understanding of this, you're largely operating out of a place that you weren't aware of, you didn't have
Mm.
control over, you didn't have agency over while you give yourself grace. I do some nonprofit work. I was talking to a group of women here the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, in one of our sessions, and they're working in addiction recovery, right? And one of
Mm.
the things I told them was, I said, the first thing you got to do is give yourself grace while you understand this principle. The second thing you have to do is recognize that while it is not your fault that you're operating the way you're operating now that you have that information and knowledge, it is your responsibility to fix it. Right. And so I think that that's where a lot of our understanding has to start. That takes different time frames for different people to wrestle with. One of the things I talk about in the book too is listen, like our parents are, for a lot of us, are a large part of us growing up. Think about how little information our parents had
Yeah.
to raise us,
Yeah.
right? Like my parents grew up on a farm in Indiana. Okay. Like there was no, I'm having a kid, Google, what do I do first day home? Like it's like there was no YouTube video,
Or
how do you
chatbots.
there's no right. So like
Yeah.
even, my oldest daughter's 8 and she turns 9 this year. It's like if all I had was my parents and their parents and the community of 100 to 150 people around me, if I'm lucky to watch what they do, no wonder a lot of the stuff, like if you think about it, we're the first generation. Like I'm a millennial, right? I'm an older millennial. I'm 37. I'm the first generation of people that, as a parent, I actually have other information outside of my parental sphere
Yeah.
that I
Right.
can
Yeah.
reference. Like, so
Yeah.
if you realize that and you go, no wonder, of course, none of this is like, and therefore you can give yourself more grace to go, okay, it's because sometimes we put all of the resources we have today as if it existed for 400 years,
Mm.
and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents made conscious, informed, well rounded, intentional decisions to shape us the way we are. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, they didn't. They just did the best with what they had. And so now that we know that, and that's the first 2 chapters of the books, is like, now that we know that, we can breathe,
Mhm.
right? And then we can go, okay, let's get over that tension that exists in a lot of us of like, why am I this way? And realize the truth. And then realize, okay, once we get past that and we just can have peace with it, then we can kind of put a line in the sand and say, how do we move forward? And what do we keep? And what do we need to rebuild?
There you go. How to tear it down and rebuild it. You described that this rebuilding often feels awkward. And you use the example, if I remember right in the book, about the clasping your hands the opposite way, like we're kind of used to doing a certain way. And even now it's little things. I mean, it's a metaphor for just little things can throw us off. So, can you think of a habit or a mindset or a pattern that you've personally had to unlearn or relearn that felt uncomfortable at first, but it proved pretty essential to your growth?
Man, so I'll share a personal one
Yeah.
that during the writing of this book I had to deal with.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's a big one coming from a corporate background. Um, I dealt with stress through alcohol.
Hmm.
That was my response,
Yeah.
right? Had a tough day, need a drink.
Yeah.
That was just my default, right? And as I was writing this book, I'm a person of faith, and I'm just in my prayer time in the morning, and God just said, "I need you to lay that down." And it was like, it was so, and I thought it was like, and then it happened the next day, like 2 weeks. I told my wife, and she's like, "That's weird." Like, and so like, and it was just this thing, right?
Yeah.
And so what I realized is that like why it proved critical to me is because I didn't realize how much of a thought, like there was such a neural pathway in my brain, so entrenched in me that I just thought there's nothing wrong with this. And I'm not saying
Right.
there's anything wrong with drinking or that's not the
Right.
point.
Right.
But for me, it was like, man, I need to be able to deal with stress better. If I am asking for big things in my life, a lot of success is being able to deal with bigger amounts of stress in a better
Mhm.
way.
Right.
So
So
like,
true.
right? So like I
Yeah.
gotta figure out a better way. But I just, again, going back to the nature thing, it's like I just always watch my mom and dad like, tough day, have a glass of wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tough day, man, like old fashioned sounds great, right? Or whatever. And so for me, that was a big one.
Yeah.
And it has proven so critical in the last 10 months of my life, where it's like, so much stress has come, and I've gained so much more self-respect because I didn't know how strong I was. Like, the stress used to get me into alcohol. I would have a couple drinks at home, then I would wake up kinda hazy, then I would kinda labor into my day, then, like, up to 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, my thoughts were kinda sorta on, kinda sorta off. Now I'm just like, "Stress, okay, breathe, think through it." For me, pray through it.
Yeah.
Um, and then just, like, I can get out of the stress mode in, like, 10 minutes now. Whereas before, it was like that would and so that's my latest example of, like, man, I had a hard wire in my brain of something that I didn't even know how it happened, when it happened. It just was there, and in this process, I was like, "How do I rebuild that habit?" And really what it was intentionally, I would get stressed. For me, I would intentionally out loud say, "I'm gonna choose to not have drink."
Mm.
But it was just that was my mechanism. I said
Yeah.
it out loud.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I said it to my wife. So I would come home at work and be like, "Man, I had a stressful day. I really could use a glass of water."
Yeah.
And the first like 10 times she heard it, and we talk about this in the book, is like the first 10 times she heard it, she thought it was weird. She's like, "What is wrong?" I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like, "It's weird. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be weird." Like I just talked about, right? Like it's supposed to be
Yeah.
weird. It's not gonna be normal, even to the people that love you the most. Like
Right.
she loved the version of me for the first 7 years of our marriage that had a drink when I was stressed. So like, of course,
Mhm.
even for her, it's gonna be weird, even though she loves me and she wants the best life for me.
Yeah.
And so what that taught me while I was writing the book, I think it was just a transition point for me to be able to speak boldly on the fact that it's gonna be weird,
Yeah.
especially for the people that know you and love you the most. And so that was the latest one for me.
Yeah, and for thanks for sharing that. And for anything that any of us reading the book or listening to this would need to rebuild, it could be something different, but it could come off weird to other people. Like, why aren't you still whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? And your example actually reminded me of something in your book. You had a John Maxwell quote, this something along the lines of, "You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily."
Mhm.
So, can you think of anything else that maybe it was a small, but a daily decision or habit that maybe it seemed minor at a time, but now that you do this, it's made some differences for you?
Yeah, so the one on the business side is
Yeah.
now before I go to bed, I write down my top 5 things I need to do the next day, and
Mhm.
I prioritize them before I go to bed.
Mhm.
Takes me 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? But I wake up with so much clarity, and, if you listen to, like, the old school, like, the OG motivational, but, Wayne Dyer and,
Yeah.
like, Jim Rohn, like, the old school
Yeah.
guys, right?
Yeah.
They talk a lot about the subconscious mind,
Mhm.
and they talk a lot about how important it is, and there's so much power in that because I can't tell you how many mornings I've woken up and in the shower, half asleep, 5:02 AM, right? I'm just like, okay, I'm just like, I'm getting my
Yeah.
gears going,
Yeah.
and a thought will pop in my head, and I know it's because
Mhm.
I'm not waking up to prioritize. I know I go to bed and my brain's working towards, "Oh, I got this coming up. I got
Yeah.
that conversation. I need to make this decision. I need to finish that project. I need whatever that is." And I'm better at you said this is such a smart word. Sometimes it's the simple things. It's like I can't tell you how many conversations I've had, and after the conversation, they've been tough conversations with my employees
Mm.
or my leaders. And after the conversation, I'm like, man, that went way better than I thought it would be. Because it's like it's
Yeah.
almost like your mind is preparing you
Mhm.
for without me consciously thinking, it's just prepping me for like, okay, remember you got to have empathy,
Yeah.
right? Remember they've gone through this, they have this going on, they're focused on this, not that, right? And
Yeah.
it's just this programming. So that little thing at the end of my day makes all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. I came across a quote from Tal Ben Shahar. He wrote a book called Happier, I seem to recall, but he said, "We're not rewarded for enjoying the journey itself, but for the successful completion." Now, he's not saying this is good. He goes, "Unfortunately, society rewards results, not processes, arrivals, not journeys." And I've seen it in project work too. Like we wait until the end to celebrate. But you actually take that on a little bit. That the blessing begins the moment the foundation is laid, not when the structure is complete, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could unpack that for us and why it's so important for us to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think it's important because it's so easy to get distracted today.
Mm,
Like, I mean, listen, I agree with the thought that society rewards that
mm,
for sure, right? I want to see the end result. The reality is that I believe the greatest reward is not the completion of the project or the task or the accomplishment.
Rebuilding, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually think it's the person you become in the process.
Mm,
Right? I think it's actually when you even when you rebuild a habit like you have and other people have as after, as they've read the book and in their own life prior and all that stuff. The reward is not necessarily, oh, I'm now X. It's no, I now know who I am at a deeper level because as I went through it, I overcame things I didn't even know were going to come up. I learned things I never even know existed. You know, I'm sure in your journey, Andy, like as you're doing this podcast, you learned about stuff about mics and about tech and about systems and that you're like, what is this world? Like it's right. So it's like that when I wrote my book. I remember just being I was so excited about who now the information that I had and the tenacity that I showed and the grit that I had to put forth. The days I didn't want to write that I did. The overcoming obstacles about with publishers and all that stuff. That's not why you write a book. That's not why
yeah,
you wanted to. I wanted
for
to do it to
sure.
help people. But what
Yeah.
happens is that like yes, society rewards the result. What I think is really why you should be rewarding yourself along the way. The way you can be rewarding yourself along the way is just spot checking like who you're becoming.
Yeah.
Because by the time the result actually happens, it's so insignificant compared to who you have become by the rebuild process
Mm,
itself.
yeah.
It's why I always wonder, you ever wonder, you ever hear people talk about like a huge accomplishment
Mm,
so humbly and you're
mm,
like, "What?" Like they're so almost nonchalant about it.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like they're like, "Eh." I think a big reason is probably because they've become such a person
Mm,
that who they are is more important than what they do or what they have.
mm, yeah.
And I think that's the power.
And projects have a defined end, and things like that. But I feel like a lot of what you're talking about in the book, like we never arrive. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's like you keep trying to go deeper, right?
Mm.
keep trying to, in your words earlier, be more resilient. So if we have to wait until we somehow arrive, I don't know, John, I kind of hope I never arrive, right? I mean, I hope that like 5 years from now, I think, man, back when John and I did that recording, I was such an idiot. like we keep learning, right? I mean, that's if we have to wait until the end, what's the end? Sort of take our last breath again.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it like that. Why do you think so many people are confused when people sell a company for $100 million and now they're like, "I'm depressed,"
Mhm.
and you're like, "What?"
Yeah.
That's why. That's
Yeah.
a great. What you just said is the reason. It's like
Yeah.
why. So again, in societal terms, so many of us are chasing things around finances that we think they've crossed the finish line, so they're great.
Yeah.
They're gonna live on a beach, and that's
Yeah.
just not. We as humans are hardwired to continually learn, grow, adapt, evolve, right? And so, yeah, the finish line. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think the finish line's overrated.
Right.
Like, I mean, in a lot of ways, right? Like
Yeah.
the societal definition of finish line. It's like I'm a millennial. I can't tell you how many of my friends are like, I want to retire at 40.
Yeah.
What the
Yeah.
heck are you gonna do for 40? Like, there's
Right.
only so many golf courses to play. And I'm a golf, right? Like, there's like, but it's like, it's all. I'm not saying it won't be fun for a hot minute. It's gonna be
Yeah.
good, right? If somebody gave you 100 million tomorrow, whatever. But it's
Yeah.
like, man, at some point you want to go, how can I help people? I want to explore a different avenue.
Mhm.
And again, going
Mhm.
back to my mention a minute ago, it's like, I'm sure that's why you started this podcast. Like you wanted to help people, you wanted to help project managers, you wanted to help frontline leaders, you wanted to help people. You could have easily just been like, I'm good. Watch Netflix for like, it's like, no, we're happiest when we are continuing to get better and evolve and create.
Yeah, well said. You mentioned a little bit earlier some pillars, and one of those pillars you wrote about is association, who we spend time with. And I think it seems obvious to some degree, but in particular, why does it matter who we spend time with or who we surround ourselves, especially during a rebuild? And as you think about your response, I'm thinking of those listening who are more introverted,
Hmm.
and they might be like, I don't necessarily like going out and building new relationships necessarily. So what encouragement may you have for them as well?
Yeah, the quote that I use in the book is Jim Rohn's famous quote, like you become the average of the five people you spend the most time around,
Yeah.
in any area, right? So if my wife and I spend time around five couples that have a really healthy marriage, chances are our marriage is going to be pretty healthy. On the converse side, I spend time with around five couples that always gossip about each other and criticize each other and flirt with people of the opposite gender, and it's going to be really hard to continue to be the couple we want to be. And so that's in everything in life, marriage, finances, faith,
Yeah.
fitness, whatever.
Yeah.
To the introverted people, I would say you're associating with people all the time, whether that be the TV shows you watch, the podcasts you listen to, the books you read, the, video games you play, it's interesting. I know that I noticed you had somebody on that recently that was talking about the evolution of leadership in an AI world, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, one of the things that we have to really get aware of is we've always had associations outside of seeing a person at a restaurant
Yeah.
like the books I read I'm associating with the author, the characters in that book. Like, believe it or not, like those you can be an introvert all day and sit in a corner in your room and read books on your Kindle till the day is long. You will become very much like the characters in the book that you are idolizing from the story that you're like. So that's what I would say to those folks is like audit that. Like if I'm watching, if I'm watching shows about a certain thing, or if I'm, reading books or listening to certain things, like those are my associations, because it's creating an internal monologue in me as to what the world actually is. And none of us really experience life. We experience the life we focus on. Tony Robbins talks about that a lot, right? And so it's like if I focus on a world where everyone is depressed and anxious and stressed and, all this stuff, like it's gonna be hard to overcome that. If I'm focused on a world, and this, Andy, like you've been around some really smart people in this podcast, and like their wavelength, they don't even process some of the things that other people process over here. They're so over, academics are the easiest one. It's like academics, they're so in academia, they don't they're there. They're not where, the person is that is at the gas station that has been working at 7-Eleven for the last, 10 years for
Right.
minimum. Like they don't understand those struggles. And so there's different worlds inside of our sphere. And to the introvert, I would just say, just look at that. Look
Yeah.
at who is entering your mental space,
Yeah.
whether physically or not.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book, it could be the music we listen to, the movies we see. There's like so many aspects to it. And I can think of some friends who come to mind that they, by most definitions, they were wealthy, but they hung out with people who were even more wealthy, and they always felt like they were poor. you know,
That's it.
it's just so interesting how our perspective. I can think of some people that politics is everything, and so in these days of polarization, it just takes them under. They're just,
Mhm.
and so what we pay attention to really matters.
No doubt.
You write that actions. I love this line. Actions tell them who we are. Words tell them who we want to be.
Hmm.
How's that insight shaped like the way you lead and let's say at home and in the workplace?
Yeah. I mean, my kids hate me for this because my kids will say sorry a lot. Like I have an 8 and 5-year-old, right? So like every human, they mess up a lot. But 8 and 5-year-olds, I'm always trying to, teach them lessons and stuff. And so my daughter is really good at, she'll be like, I'm sorry, daddy. I said, I'm sorry. I said, okay, just show me. Don't tell me.
Yeah. Right.
And because I want her to understand this principle too, which is, man, everybody talks a really big game. Like I've been a leader for 12 years, I think now. Everybody is an A player in an interview. Like, you ever notice that? Like,
That's
tell
true.
me about you, Andy. And you're like, I'm the best at, right? Like, there's almost never someone that walks in an interview and has been like, man, my leader doesn't like when I do like,
Mm.
or it's the person that's self-deprecating. It's the Michael Scott office line. It's like,
I
it's
care
like,
too much. I work too
yeah,
hard.
it's that, right? It's like, other than that, it's like everybody else is a superstar. And so everybody talks a really good game. What happens behind closed doors? Like, that's who you are. Like, I heard this quote once, and I forget who said it now. I just love it so much. And it was like, my main goal in life is to be respected the most by those who know me the most.
Mm. That's good.
And it was like, and what they were saying as they elaborated was like, I don't care what people think of me based on a soundbite that's 48 seconds long that somebody shared with them on TikTok. Like, doesn't matter, right? Because what I say is not who I am. What happens when the stress hits? What happens when my family needs something? What happens when I have to pick between work and my son's baseball game? What happens? Right? And it's not a judgmental thing one way or the other, but our actions are a cumulative synopsis of what our life is and who we are. And a lot of people in a world where everything's getting captured, social media, podcasts, whatever, and it's just like everyone can say the right thing. Like, who are you? And I also think, sidebar for a second, I also think that's going to become in like 5 years the ultimate currency. Like, I think so many people are focused on the hook of a video on social media, or how how they're communicating and what they sound like within their organizations, up, down, and sideways. How are they portraying themselves? I actually think that there will be a day, especially as AI continues to evolve, where the human being, the character of the human, will make a massive comeback, where people will have so much value in the quiet, character driven person that just gets results, has integrity, does what they say they're going to do, right? It's like those things are so rare today. And it's almost dismissed to being like, I just pour one of the things, man. It's just like part of the times. It's
Yeah.
like, no, you have to know who you are. And for me, that's a bigger calling.
Mhm.
That's a, when I die, my kids are going to remember who I am, not what I
Yeah.
said.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And maybe the areas for us to be thinking about rebuilding are where maybe no one else knows it, but we know where the gaps are between what we're saying and what we're doing, right? And
Big
that's
time.
not, I've never had a conversation with somebody about honesty or integrity. They're like, I'm so glad we had this conversation because I have a real honesty problem, John.
Right.
Like we often don't take the time to reflect on it. But if I think that's what your book does a really good job at, of trying to kind of poke at us a little bit. Like what are some ways to think about this? And what is that little line of code that we're running on? And where did we inherit that from? And what are we going to do about that? And so many ways to apply this at work and at home. And so many things I'd love to talk with you about, John. But let's end with this one because we have
Yeah.
a lot of parents who listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other ideas from the book that you feel like you and your wife have applied at home with your kids
Yeah.
that people might benefit from hearing?
Yeah. So one of the things we do with our kids at the end of every day is we ask them 5 questions. It started with three. I think actually
You
in
have
the
three
book
in the
it
book.
is three.
Yeah.
It's evolved, so you get real time. So the 5 questions are: what went well today? What was tricky or hard today? What do you want me to know about today? And the two we've added since the book are: what'd you learn and what are you thankful for?
Mm,
And those are the 5 things. And we walk through it every night. And I would say 60 to 70% of the nights, it's pretty surface. It's
mhm,
pretty, what are you thankful for? I'm thankful for my teddy bear or whatever, right?
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
something, what happened at school today? Oh, somebody, shared their snack with me. Great.
Mhm,
But about 30, 40, and the reason we're doing that, again, I have a 5 and an 8 year old. The reason we're doing that is not to get a lot of the answers at 5 and 8. It's to create a habit for them. And I'm noticing my 8 year old is starting to open up a little bit more. Hey, what do you want me to know about today? And if the parents that are listening, if your kids are like mine, they come home from school and they've held in a lot of energy to like make sure they're like tight for the teacher, and then they're home in their safety place and they just let some energy just flow. And so that's okay. Like, I want them to be kids, go out, have fun, play with your friends, whatever. But what we notice is as they wind down, especially that question like, hey, what was tricky today? And what do you
yeah.
want me to know about today? Right? Those are the things that I will, I was probably 2, 3 days ago. I said, what was tricky today? And I had seen my daughter all the way through when she went to school. And then I picked her up, which is rare. So I saw her as much as I could see her outside school. And I said, what was tricky today? She was great. And she said, a boy kicked dirt at me today. And I said, oh, that's like, who was, did you know him? And like, and I didn't, again, like as a parent, it's like, then it's one of those things where that's where the intentionality of the pillars we talk about in the book is so important. It's like, I got a choice to make. Am I about to go like hunt that boy down? Right.
Right. Yeah.
Like, as a dad, like, wow, I'm like, what boy did what? But then I talked to her. Hey, how did it make you feel? What caused it? What do you think? What did you do about it? Did you think that's the right thing to do about it? Then it was a teacher. It enabled me like, hey, can daddy share something with you? Yeah. sometimes people do things for this reason, and you have to give them grace sometimes and other times, right? So it was just an opportunity.
Yeah.
And so those 5 questions for us have been so instrumental. And I have a feeling as they get older, it will be the gateway for as my daughter and son enter, preteen and teen years, and so social media and exposure to kids who believe different ways. And again, going
Mhm.
back to the programming, like they're going to run into kids that are programmed in a different environment than mine, and they're going to
Yeah.
experience some things that aren't esoteric. And so, you know, those 5 questions for us have been really, really helpful. And just getting to know our kids, and what's cool is we answer the questions too.
Yeah.
So that's
Right.
the other
Right.
part, right? So we
Right.
answer the questions too. So sometimes I'll go, "What's tricky today?" And I will share. I will be as vulnerable, age appropriate as I can be with my kids, and I'll say I did not respond well to something today,
Yeah.
and they'll ask me, "Well, what happened?" Because now they're curious.
Yeah.
I
Right.
had somebody at work that did this and da 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 da, da, and I got frustrated and I had to go apologize. Or
Mhm.
sometimes I got frustrated and I have to apologize tomorrow because I drove home and I don't feel good about how I made them feel. And I just got to be human with them. I think as a parent, man, it's so important for our kids to they put us on a pedestal, whether we know it or not. And we've all grown up and realized that our parents weren't that great. They didn't have it all figured out, and that's okay. And we still love
Yeah.
them anyway. And that's what we
Right.
hope for our kids too.
Yeah. The one question there that I thought was uniquely interesting was what's tricky, because it wasn't like roses and thorns. What's a high? What's a low? You hear
Yeah.
things like that. But what's tricky is kind of a cool angle on it. It shows there's nuance and gray areas, and well, this kind of felt tricky. Or that's a really clever way of saying it, John.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been an interesting, and it's funny because now, like, our kids are in dance and baseball, and so we'll get home late from stuff and they're tired. And
Mhm.
we'll go, okay, let's just pray real quick and we'll go to bed. And my daughter and son will call us out now. What do we got to do question? Right? Which is awesome, right? So it's like
Come
they're holding us accountable, right? So
on.
it is. It's a family thing. But again, it goes back, Andy, to like it's the intention that we talked about at the beginning of the pod. It's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I mean, you gotta be intentional. You gotta be willing to be intentional. You gotta be
Mhm.
willing to be vulnerable in the intentionality. And you gotta give yourself grace to know that, man, you're gonna find out some stuff about yourself as you rebuild that you're not gonna love.
Yeah.
And some of it you've built and some of it you haven't.
Mhm.
And most of it's gonna be a mix. But, you know, as we wind down, like I encourage your audience, man, like we all got one life.
Yeah.
And the genesis of this book came from like me sitting on my back porch and just getting a thought that just rocked me. And at the time I was 36, and I just remember thinking, man, I have like 50 more years if I'm lucky here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds like a long time, but that's like 50 more Christmas mornings.
Yeah.
Like 50 more times do I walk outside of a Houston house and feel that crisp fall morning hit my face without humidity and get the encouragement that fall is on its way. Like only 50 times? That's crazy. Right.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage everybody, like, yes, it's a little bit more work. Yes, it's definitely more vulnerable. But on the other side, the freedom that you will feel to be the authentic you, it's a superpower.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place to end it. For those listening, you've just gotten a taste of what's in John's book. If you'd like a deeply thoughtful book on how to build on what you've heard here, I recommend you get a copy of Rebuild, Don't Repair. I put links to the book and the book's website in the show notes for this cast. So, John, thank you for joining us on the
For
People and
sure.
Projects podcast.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you.
Special thanks to John for joining us here on episode 470 of the People and Projects podcast. This isn't the typical sort of book we'd normally cover on the podcast. It's definitely written from a biblical Christian worldview, which we didn't focus heavily on during the discussion, but the book definitely comes from that lens. So, regardless of your background, if you're open to that lens, I'm telling you, I think you'll resonate with the book a lot. And even if not, I still think there's ideas from this discussion that are worth considering. There's so many even from today's discussion, but how about John's line that actions tell who we are, words tell them who we want to be? Like the line I think he said he used with his daughter, like, hey, show me that you're sorry, don't tell me. I think that's just kind of an interesting thing. Or, the questions that they end the day with, you could extend that out to teams, like questions that you ask during one-on-ones or something like that. I resonate with the theme that you heard in the discussion about how rebuilding is just like breathing. This is not just a one-time thing. It's something that we aspire to continue to do. And I think you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you were just somebody who's willing to be complacent. You want to keep being stretched. Well, this is one of those books that I think it can do it. This book can actually help. If you pick up a copy, I'd love to hear what you take away from it. You can reach me at show@peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Whether it's from the book or today's discussion, let me know what you connected with. I want to remind you about if you or someone you know is going for their PMP, make sure to check out our 5 best resources to pass your PMP on your first try. We've gotten really good feedback on that one, and the link is in the show notes. And could I ask you a favor? I'd love to hear from you, first of all. If you haven't reached out in a while, I get emails, I get LinkedIn messages from listeners almost every day, but on a regular basis. But if you have not reached out, I'd love to hear from you and just hear, what do you get value out of? Is there anything I could do differently? I'd love to hear from listeners. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at show@peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Also, if you haven't left a review yet, please do so. It's one of those things that really helps the outreach when it comes to other people finding out about the podcast. And maybe you can think of just one person. You're like, you know what? I think they would like this podcast. You tell them. We'd love to help develop them as well. Well, on behalf of me and my team, let me just say this. Thank you so much. There's so many podcasts you could be listening to. Thank you for making this one of your regular podcasts.